Hi, I'm Chris Sangster, and welcome back to the studio. Today, I want to look at an exciting new plugin. This plugin is not only something I want to bring to your attention because I think it can speed up your workflow and get you to the end result faster, it can definitely do that, but also because it lets me talk about one of my absolute favorite people in the music industry. The plugin is GilderVox, and the man is Joe Gilder. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with Joe, but in case you're not, he runs Home Studio Corner and is one of the OGs of the online music production space. If you don't follow him, pause this video right now and go do it. I guarantee you will learn so much. All of his links are in the description box below the like button. Not only is Joe an amazing mixer, producer, musician, content creator, business person, he's also just a great dude. I've been lucky enough to meet and interface with Joe on several occasions, and I'm proud to call him a mentor of mine. I was fortunate enough to have a lot of great people teach me the ropes in my early days in the music industry, but when it came to actually learning how to mix, there were two guys on two YouTube channels that taught me pretty much everything I know. It was Graham Cochran at The Recording Revolution and Joe Gilder at HomestudioCorner.com. And now Joe has released his very first plugin. So it was the least I could do to thank him, to check it out, and of course share it with you guys. But you know me, I'm not blowing smoke here. Joe didn't pay me for this or even ask me to do this review, and I'm always going to offer you, all my subscribers, my 100% honest opinion in a review. That'll never change. Luckily though, Joe has made a great plugin, so I'm super stoked to show it to you guys. Let's dive in. GilderVox is an all-in-one vocal processing plugin. Think the classic CLA vocals from Waves, that type of thing. But the thing in my opinion that sets GilderVox apart is that it's designed with a very specific style of vocals in mind: rock vocals. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty though, you might be asking yourself, Chris, you're always talking about using more plugins, each doing less work, and about how a great mix is made up of thousands of small decisions. Isn't an all-in-one vocal plugin the antithesis of your mixing philosophy? Well, yes and no. I'll show you how I would personally incorporate GilderVox into my own mixes, but mixing is not where I think GilderVox or any other all-in-one processor shines. It's actually in the recording and producing phase where I use plugins like this all the time. I call these the quick and dirty plugins, ones that you can just throw on a track and get a good sound instantaneously. Will it be perfect from a mixing perspective? No, but that's not the point when recording and producing. In these workflows, time is of the essence. You're either rushing to not forget an idea or working to a deadline because you only have the artist in the studio for a limited amount of time. Either way, you need good sounds fast, not perfect sounds slow. That's where the all-in-one plugins can really save the day. And if you're recording or producing rock vocals, GilderVox will fit the bill perfectly. All right, let's load up GilderVox and see what it can do. For this review, we're going to be using a song called She's a Number Station that I wrote with my good buddy Daniel Mandrachenko. It's about Cold War era spies falling in love. It's cooler than it sounds, I promise. Anyways, if we load GilderVox up, we see it's super simple, clean, easy to use interface. 7 knobs to control 7 functions and input and output gain knobs. Couldn't be simpler. We've got a compressor, a de-esser, 3 bands of EQ, and then what I think is the really great part about this plugin, a distortion feature and a slapback delay feature. The choice to include these 2 effects specifically instead of something more standard like a reverb or an 1/8 note delay shows what Joe had in mind when making this plugin. You can certainly get clean, upfront, modern vocals with just the dynamics and EQ controls, but the full potential of GilderVox will shine on rock vocals that need that edge that distortion and slapback give to the sound. And I, for one, am happy to have another option for these effects in my arsenal. Maybe I won't use Decapitator and Echo Boy on every single vocal now. Let's see if we can tweak GilderVox to mimic the vocal chain I already have on the lead vocal in this song. As we can see here, I've got EQ from the UAD Precision Channel Strip, compression from the UAD 1176, de-essing from the FabFilter Pro DS, and distortion from, you guessed it, Soundtoys Decapitator. And then a bit more EQ from Channel EQ. Here's what that sounds like. Discreet. I'll double this track, remove all of those plugins, and load just one instance of GilderVox instead. I'm gonna leave on the auto tune and the plugins that are across all of the vocal tracks on the vocal bus, but that's not gonna affect this test since we're comparing GilderVox to the channel strip on the lead vocal. Firstly, I'll add some compression. As I did with the 1176, I'm gonna aim for around 3 to 5 dBs of gain reduction on the peaks.
Discreet observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away.
A few interesting things I noticed about the compressor. First is that it does add a bit of gain to the signal, but only up to a point. It seems about the first third of the knob will raise the gain slightly, and then from there on, it's just adding more compression without adding more level.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away. She's a cold killer.
I actually like this setup for vocals, as I generally need my vocal compressor to give some extra level to the signal in order to make the vocals cut through the mix. But without a makeup gain to tweak, it's good to see this level boost is appropriately subtle and doesn't get out of hand as we add more compression. Also, it seems like Joe's gone for a moderate attack with probably an auto release on this compressor if I had to guess, and that totally makes sense for a do-it-all compressor. Personally, I would have made the attack a bit quicker, so it's more attuned for dynamic leveling like the 1176, but I can certainly understand the thought process that's going on here. Next up, let's add the de-essing.
She's a cold killer, put ricin in my tea, got a price on her, 5 million USD, she's gonna undercover.
Just works great. No notes. Moving on to the EQ bands. Now, these really interest me as the vocabulary used is a bit nebulous. I would imagine Mud Remover takes out low mids, Smoother takes out upper mids to highs, and then Air adds high end, but we'll see.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away. She's a cold killer, put ricin in my tea, got a price on her, 5 million USD, she's gone undercover.
Yeah, I think that assessment is pretty fair, although there might be something else going on, I'm not sure. Those are going to be the most common problem areas to solve on vocals, so it makes sense to target those areas. And the EQ sounds nice, not overly harsh on the top end, and even the highest settings aren't super aggressive, so we can push these knobs right up to their limit without ruining the sound, which is great. Let's do a quick comparison with the original, focusing just on the EQ and compression.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away.
Pretty close, honestly. I think we're certainly in the same ballpark. Let's move on to the distortion.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away. She's a cold killer, put ricin in my tea.
It's a little bit more biting than the settings I have in Decapitator, but it's really not all that dissimilar. Definitely an appropriate vocal distortion sound that helps the vocal cut through the mix. Let's hear the slap now.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away. She's a cold killer, put ricin in my tea, got a price on her, 5 million USD, she's gone undercover.
super cool. Love that. Nice tight slap. Perfect for this kind of tune. Man, this actually sounds almost perfectly mixed now. It's crazy. I feel like there's a bit of a buildup in the low end below where the mud remover is working. I wish I could tweak that. It would have been nice to have just maybe a simple low cut filter in addition to the 3 tone knobs so we could address any low end issues. So I actually like that slap so much. I'm gonna add it to my original channel strip. And this is probably how I would use GilderVox in a mixing scenario. I'm just gonna wanna add the character of the slap delay or the distortion at the end of my chain, but leave EQ and compression to the other plugins. Even though the GilderVox track is pretty close to perfectly mixed, I know I can make it like 5% better if I had full control over each process. And to me, that 5% is super important in mixing. But in a recording or production session, that 5% is meaningless. GilderVox will get you a great sounding vocal in a matter of seconds, and that's amazing for those workflows. All right, now that we have the slap applied to the original chain, let's do a final comparison.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away.
Man, that is super close. I do still hear that low end buildup on the GilderVox track, but that could easily be taken care of with one extra EQ move. Other than that though, they are super close in tone. But you know what they aren't close in? Price. All of the plugins on the original channel strip would run you almost $700, but GilderVox is only 49 bucks. That's a deal I can get behind. So clearly, I'm impressed with GilderVox, but I am still curious about what exactly is going on under the hood, especially in those EQ knobs. So before we wrap up this review, let's get nerdy. Usually when I analyze a plugin, I'll run white noise through it and look at how a frequency analyzer changes. But today let's do something a little different. Let's load GilderVox up in another great plugin, Plugin Doctor, to get a full picture of how those EQ bands are working. And right off the bat, we have a surprise. GilderVox is not transparent, not in the least actually. Look at the frequency response with all the knobs at 0. So there's the reason there's no low cut filter. One is already applied. Looks to start around 200 Hertz and fairly steeply roll everything off below 100. Super interesting. Perhaps that boom I was hearing was a result of the distortion. I'm not sure, but we'll have a look at that. But check out this 2.5 dB boost between 2K and 5K, right in the presence range of a vocal with a little extra bump at 2 and at 4K. So right out of the box, GilderVox is gonna make your vocal sound more present and less dull. Let's actually go back to my vocal, reset the knobs, and do an A/B test to hear that effect.
Discreet in observation, an unmarked Chevrolet, though her love was an enigma, I couldn't break away.
And we can definitely hear it. It's clearly cutting out some of the low end and boosting a bit of presence. It really makes the vocal sound a bit clearer right away, which is a really cool feature that I didn't expect at all. Now let's have a look at the mud remover. We can see that it's not just reducing lows and low mids. It's also boosting the high end, a 2-for-1, playing into the inverse EQ effect, where boosting highs can make a sound have less apparent lows and vice versa. Very clever, Joe. At its highest setting, it also adds a very extreme low cut. Again, I understand better now why there's no separate low cut option, as by cranking up the mud remover, you can get a very, very aggressive low cut. The smoother is quite interesting as well. It creates a cut in the middle of that default presence boost, but it also raises a bit of the mids and highs. I guess the thinking here is that although the 2 to 5K range is where vocal presence usually lives, it can also easily get harsh. So we can combat that harshness with the smoother and complement that cut by bringing out some warmth in the low mids, some extra sparkle in the highs. I like how the smoother band is only doing 2.5 dBs of boost and at most -1 dB of cut, and that's at its most extreme settings. It would have been all too easy to make the max setting completely unusable by having it add some ridiculous amount of EQ, but the decision to keep it subtle is one I completely agree with. A little EQ goes a long way, and at least with the smoother knob, a little's all we got. And finally, the airband looks to be a simple high shelf boost around 10K that can be boosted up to 8 dBs. Makes total sense. All right, one final thing. Let's see how the distortion changes the frequency response and see if my suspicions were correct that it adds back in low end. Yup, definitely. We can actually see that at lower settings, it creates a telephone EQ shape with rolled off lows and highs and a boost at 2K. But as the level of distortion increases, those lower frequencies return and we get a noticeable bump at 100 Hertz. Definitely what we were hearing on my vocal, and also super common for distortion to do this. In fact, this is exactly why I had that final channel EQ in my original vocal chain, to cut down on the extra low end that Decapitator was adding. Super cool and interesting stuff here. I love seeing the attention to detail that was put into this plugin. From the unique EQ shapes to the distortion tone and that great sounding slapback delay, I really think Joe has a winning formula on his hands here, and this is a plugin that is a great addition for anyone who works with rock vocals. If you want to check out GilderVox for yourself, head to the link in the description box below the like button. If you have any questions, please leave them down there in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you at the studio next time. Thanks.